More and more Americans are blaming Trump for the Capitol riots, but that doesn't mean a prosecution is going to be slam dunk. It's actually far from it. If you follow the comments of anybody following the details, and frankly, I haven't followed the details. I watched parts of it. I watched reruns of things. I try to figure out what's really going on. It's very clear that these hearings need to take place because this has significant ramifications. But is Trump going to be prosecuted with Merrick Garland? With this Department of Justice? Is he going to be prosecuted?
That's probably not is the answer, and it's an incredible question because obviously you have Garland who was potentially going to the Supreme Court and maybe got shafted by most accounts.
Yeah.
But I think Chris Christie was the one who really gave some comments recently, some insight as a former prosecutor himself, and he said the concern here is if you swing and you miss. Mm-hmm. What if you swing and a miss? You're going to be concerned about what sort of an effect that has, and basically they're looking for to prosecute this. It's got to be almost a guarantee. It's got to be something that's 99.9%.
Well, he goes beyond that. He says the Department of Justice is so sometimes dysfunctional. I mean, that's what it is. When they're so dysfunctional, then unless there's a 99.9% of a prosecution being successful, they won't do it. That's why you see them going after this low-hanging fruit all the time. That's why we don't ever see them going after Wall Street white-collar criminals who steal billions of dollars from the American public, because unless it's a softball, especially with Merrick Garland, they're not going to go after this. And that's what Christie says. And it's not just Christie. There's a lot of people who are talking about the idea of willful blindness. The concept that they'd have to get to is that there was willful blindness on his part. I think there is. I think when you look at it, it doesn't take much to get there to conclude that. But they have to get there in front of a jury to prove intent. And without intent, did he have an intention by way of willful blindness to allow this to happen? And most of the pundits are saying no, and I agree with that.
Right, and I think you're right, is that the fundamental problem is one of saying, well, I don't want to lose. I don't want to potentially be the guy who lost a case, so I'm just not going to take it. If it's a hard case, if it's a difficult case, even if maybe there's some really strong facts, some of the stuff that we've come out and seen that is frankly uncomfortable to kind of watch, uncomfortable to see, but it's like, hey, look, if this is not a guarantee, then I'm gonna go on to the next one and prosecute the guy who doesn't have any money to defend himself or the lower level person.
Well, you always see it, don't you? I mean, and it's disturbing because it's part of their culture. And when Chris Christie and these other folks are making this statement, they literally are saying, this is a Department of Justice, unless it's a softball, they're not going to prosecute anybody. HSBC, how about that? You were involved with that whole banking issue as a lawyer. HSBC pleads to washing money for terrorism that ended up in the death of American soldiers. Yes, we did that. Yes, we washed the money. Yes, we made $100 billion. And yes, we knew it was going to kill American soldiers. And you know what the Department of Justice did? They fined them.
Cost of doing business.
Cost of doing
business. That's just a little bit of our margin, a small little percentage of our margin.
And nothing will change. The next generation will do the same thing. He needs to be prosecuted. Trump needs to be prosecuted. Is there enough to do it? Yes, there is. Will they do it? No, they won't. That's my take on it right there.
I think you're right, pal.
Yeah. Thank you for joining me, Mike.
Thanks for having me, pal.
That's all for this week, but all of these segments are going to be available on the coming week right here on this channel, and you can follow us on Twitter at America's Lawyer. I'm Mike Papantonio, and this has been America's Lawyer, where every week we tell you the stories that corporate media won't tell you because their advertisers don't let them do it, or because their political connections don't allow for it. We'll see you next week.